button now. All right, so I think Richard's probably waiting for the magical transition that I popped up there, but welcome to Owlbear Soup. Quick heads up. We did some changing with audio and visual, so let us know if there's any issues. But most importantly, we have a very special guest with us today, and that would be Teos. Hey, Teos, how's it going? Yeah, no, it's you.
Hello.
We dragged you into being the first guest of going last, so I thought it was good that you would also be the first guest here.
This is such an honor.
Something nice and safe, so that if it all goes horribly wrong, we can just erase that episode.
and I'll only cry a little bit, as you know.
Yeah. So I've known Teos for 10, 12 years now. Started out playing 4th edition Dungeons and Dragons through a series of home games, and a billion conventions playing organized play together. And you've done some amazing things. My favorite thing you've done personally is Ashes of Athos, which was a fantastic organized play campaign based in Dark Sun. Most recently, Acquisitions Inc. rolled out. The book that I didn't ask for, but I reference more than any other book on my shelf at this point, just because there's so much good stuff in there. I make no qualms. I'm not a huge Acquisitions Inc. fan, but I'm a fan of the book. It's a really good book. So anyway, welcome to the show, Teos.
Thanks. I really appreciate being on the Owlbear Soup. I have personally hunted down 6 owlbears in preparation for the show. And no, it's cool. I really dig what you guys are doing, and your show has helped me through some of the quarantine times. So thank you for that.
Yeah,
that is great.
And yes. Also, hi, Rich. Sorry,
hi.
I'm used to introducing you as well.
I just jumped in. I was really excited about that transition, Justin. That was great.
Yeah. Was it? Yeah. Did that work out okay?
Yes. I'm a fan. I'm a big fan.
Awesome. Cool. Yeah. So, before we dive into things too much, I always feel like I'm doing this step back thing. I don't want to do the step back thing. Let's go forward. So, Teos, we've talked about your streaming habits lately. A little bit. Tell us a little bit about. Let's just kick it off. Tell us a little bit about the streaming you're doing over here on Twitch.
I'm trying to quit my streaming habit, but no. So streaming is something I started doing because I just wanted to get comfortable with the technology, feel a little better about it. So I started streaming the lore of Neverwinter, which is just something easy because I already know the game fairly well, having played it here and there over the years. And so what I do is I jump into the game to some section of the game and talk about the D&D lore that's in that, because Neverwinter is an official branding, arrangement that Wizards of the Coast and this company Cryptic have to make the video game. And they work really closely on it. So when you go to the Thayan Enclave area of the world, it's all of the design is something that's been vetted by Wizards of the Coast. They've looked at all the art assets. When you look at and they interpret all of the different chapters that are released. So they do Chult, they do Tiamat, they do all of the big books. Most of the big books, they turn into some version of Neverwinter, and you get to see it, Barovia. So it's pretty cool. So I pick a zone and then I stream it. It's just a fun way to, I think, be extroverted to practically no one, because I don't have a lot of viewers, but it's a lot of fun. And people do watch the videos later and seem to enjoy it. So that's cool.
Wow.
Go ahead. Rich.
Oh, fine. When I haven't played the game, especially with these updates you're talking about, when they take over the world with a new storyline, is it just specific zones, or does it feel like everything is Barovia themed for the next 3 months and then it switches?
So it depends. Barovia, they had to do the clever thing of how can you move between zones when you're not supposed to? So you save the Vistani in an attack on their caravan by werewolves, and they give you a special amulet that lets you go back and forth between Barovia, which is its own self-contained zone, and then the rest of the world. In other cases, they'll do a permeates the world. So when Out of the Abyss came out, they had abyssal fissures rupture in different areas of a lot of the zones that have been around for a long time. Mm-hmm. Same thing with elemental evil. You have the forces of elemental evil taking over certain places. So you'd have like earth cultists in Reclamation Rock. Perfect. Things like that. So.
That's great. I love seeing those in games because it is just a clever way to, especially, as a longtime player of these, to just change the atmosphere. And that's enough. Suddenly I'm into it. So that's very cool. I saw your post about the most recent one for Hell, I think. Bell.
Yeah, so they've got an Avernus piece, and they changed their model over time. But currently what they do is they release what they call a mod, and just like the D&D modules, right? And they released Descent into Avernus, where this house, a sort of a castle, has been pulled into Hell. And then they've just released an expansion where Bell, the former Lord of Avernus, who was replaced by Zariel, sort of has his own scheme. But it's unfortunately quite the mess. It's really hard to figure out the narrative entirely, and I don't know that it canonically makes sense in a D&D sense. But then they also just don't explain anything that's going on. So literally everybody's running around in the zone chat going like, how do I do this? What's going on? and you go into the main event to take on Bell, and everybody's just dying, and you're going, oh God, here we go again.
Perfect.
I do remember over time you having these issues with previous modules that they've put forth. Are any of do they go back and do they revamp them based on community input, or do they just say, tough, you're on your own?
It's a little more of an They do periodically sand things down, but a lot of times it's basically what you see is what you get, and it's what's going to be there. They might, true bugs they'll fix, but they'll just sort of, it is what it is, right? Mm-hmm. Like they have an event right now called Hell Pit. And you're pulled into this, you make a devilish bargain for rewards, and you go into this arena and you just slaughter what you'd think is maybe devils, because help it. But if you look around the room, there are both demons and devils cheering you on watching this arena. And I'm like, devils and demons that just sort of, and there's some famous like demons, like Baphomet is in the, stands watching, and Demogorgon, and you're like, don't think this is what they kind of condone, but and it just is what it is right now. It's just, I mean, the event really is just go in and slaughter several waves of things, and if you survive, you get a reward. Okay.
in kind of a Futurama style setting where it's just a little ridiculous.
Yeah, it's a little ridiculous.
Yeah, okay.
In the stream, I tend to gloss over that sort of stuff. So anything I don't like, I don't spend time on. And because a lot of times the world has, any zone will have a lot of different things. What I try to do is think about, as a DM, like it's really cool to walk around 3D in Barovia or in a Drow city or any of that. And so it's just, you get great artwork in the D&D books. They use the artwork to make these games. And when you walk around, you're like, wow, this is really cool. Or some of the monsters, they're very 4th edition style. So they'll have these awesome things like they'll shove you backwards and knock you prone, or they'll pull you with a lasso. And that kind of thing is really neat to see how they express that.
Now I'm just thinking back, not to bring up Birthright every single episode, but the Birthright video game. They were trying really hard. It was just this moment where it was like Doom style, close to 2D that was pretending to be 3D. Oh, they tried so hard, and it almost, like, that was the closest I got to that feeling.
I do not play Birthright.
It was a game that happened. It was fun. No, it was fun. You got all the realm building, and then the adventures were kind of like the old school 2D dungeon quest sort of things that D&D put out before that. So it was a cool like amalgam of things.
I'm still ready to play in your Birthright campaign that when you started up.
Yeah, that's gonna be exciting.
Not that I have any idea. Like that's one of the settings that I've never played was Birthright. It's just it was one that I just somehow dodged.
Most people did, I think.
Spelljammer. I missed that one completely too.
You sure made a lot of boxes and things from Birthright, and I own a lot of them, but I've never played a Birthright game.
Oh wow. Okay, I said it last time. I got to do some research.
Spelljammer, now that's a great campaign. So.
It's also one I've never played. It's always been tangentially related to the ones that I've played, because over the years I've played a lot of Planescape and Forgotten Realms, and and there's this kind of void between the two of them where you could easily slam Spelljammer.
If I were to redo Spelljammer, I would think that you'd want to apply a little bit of the Planescape angle, because Planescape had that awesome culture faction piece. And Spelljammer was just like, everything is possible. And that was actually its attraction. It was a little silly that, flying through space. That thing, when I saw the box, I'm like, this is the dumbest product ever. And then, of course, my high school dorm mates, friends all bought it. And they're like, run it. And I'm like, okay. So I start running it. And what I realized is it was awesome. It was like Star Trek. Like every time you played, you could be on a random planet. You didn't have to worry about continuity or any of that. And you could just be like, I'm on this planet doing this cool stuff, and I can use anything on my shelf. So it was perfect when you start to get jaded at the end of an edition. You could be like, I'm going to have, a Fessel Hydra in a swamp world, and this plot, anything could be used. And you could use any old adventure or whatever, just shove it into some weird planet or asteroid or whatever. And it was great. And you could have massive ship battles, which was awesome.
So it really is bad news when, Spelljammer is confirmed, because that means it's the end of the edition, right? Means we get to look forward to 6th edition or Pathfinder 1.5.
Yeah.
Oh, wow. I had never thought about Spelljammer that way, because now it reminds me it's got this Monster of the Week style, like a very episodic format, which it's tough to do in the other campaign worlds because there is so much lore and continuity, right? How does this thing we just did affect, I don't know, the next place we go? Did they hear about us? Or, does everybody know about us now? Can I talk to Elminster yet? But Spelljammer, it just doesn't matter. You just keep moving on. That's fantastic.
Yeah, totally.
When you set out to do your streams, do you know ahead of time what you're going to talk about? Do you do any prep ahead of time, or is this all like you go out there and you're like, oh yeah, here's this ship, so I'm going to give you a little bit of lore that I remember about, this ship?
The first couple streams I did, because there are areas I didn't super know, and it sort of complicated how the layout of the stream. So I covered the Thayan areas, and there's a whole piece. They truly use the 4th edition Neverwinter sourcebook, and that sourcebook has like many pages about what's going on. And the same thing is true of the Elven Kingdoms. And so when I did that, those 2 zones, I actually spent a fair bit reading through the book and preparing and thinking about it. For a lot of the other zones, if it's something like Chult, like, having run it in the campaign that you were in, Justin, I know that stuff really well, and so I don't have to prep the lore side of things, and I can just run around and talk about whatever I feel like talking about. It's pretty low prep and high enjoyment. Yeah. So it depends.
Nice. And have you, and I've played in several of your campaigns, and I've played several of your adventures and all that stuff. Do you find you are able to, whenever you dive into it and you give these examples of what DMs could do, are these things you've actually done? Have you actually pulled things from the video game and converted them to tabletop?
Yeah, never 100%, but I have done that. I've had inspiration from the game, because they do have some pretty neat ideas in there, and they're worth stealing. So it's another nice source. Yeah.
I'm just thinking about Baldur's Gate 2.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Very specifically, early on, there is a specific pixel that if you click on it, you find a demi-lich. I have never put that into a game, but now I kind of want to. Yeah. You get teleported to a demi-lich's lair. Good luck, everybody.
Good luck. Yeah. Well, yeah. I mean, I'm running a Mad Mage right now, and it's like there's plenty of little things where it's like if you take the wrong step, it's like, oh hi, all of a sudden I'm at a level that's 13 levels over my level. It's like, oops, how'd I get here? There's definitely some of that in D&D that click the pixel, but instead it's a walk through the portal, and it's like, whoops, there you go. Party wipe.
Yeah. There are a couple of things that I've done officially where I've borrowed from things. Like when I wrote the first Adventures League epic, I took a couple of ideas from Guild Wars, the old MMO. Mm-hmm. They had some really nice sort of missions that you'd go into, and they had sort of, I liked the creativity of what was going on, how they designed the situation, the scenario. And so I took a couple of those ideas and turned them into transmuted them into something else. But the core idea of how players were working together, because that could be a lot of fun, right? When you think of the party, and if they have to split up and do things, I think video games often do that kind of thing well. You've got to go over here and man the ballista while you've got to take on the boss and tank it. And that sort of thing actually can be hugely rewarding, especially in convention events, if you do it right. It can never be 100% the video game. That, I think, tends to go poorly and feels like a video game. But you can take some of those concepts and put it into a D&D setting and still have a lot of story to it, and it can be really cool.
Yeah, I know that's, when we were doing Ashes of Athos and Ian and I were working on a couple of those adventures, we definitely pulled some of the ideas that we got out of video games we were playing at the time and put them in in one of the things that we, I forget if that made it into final copy or not, but we had a big discussion where Ian and I were trying to create a monster that once you got it past a certain level, it essentially morphed into a whole new encounter.
Mm-hmm.
And those were the kind of things that we liked pulling, because you see that in video games where you're up against a boss. It's like, okay, and then all of a sudden, like, the health bar freezes. You can't do any more damage to it. It does this crazy animation. Health bar fills up. It's this new version of the same monster. It's continuing the same encounter, but it's just like, and then you have to tackle it a different way.
Yeah, that's great. Exactly. That kind of thing is just super fun.
Right.
Well worth stealing.
Absolutely. So, we...
Is frozen.
Yep.
Oh, you're back.
I'm back. Yeah, it's. I think everything's being a little weird today. I think it's one of those internet days.
The soup's a little chunky today. That's fine.
It does. The internet's like, hey guys, I need a Sunday. Just chill. Just let me just putter along, and we'll all get there eventually. So, kind of stepping away from video games. So you're streaming. That's one of the ways you're passing time during this quarantine. It's not really quarantine. It's a stay-at-home order. We're all social distancing, doing what we can. How else are you keeping busy?
Well, I still have my day job and I work remotely normally, so I'm lucky to have my job and it's all normal and stable and something I'm quite used to. And the kids are used to the fact that my wife and I both work from home mostly. So now we just work from home all the time. They're used to it, so we're in very good shape as in terms of disruption of normal life. But for my kids, it's a huge disruption, right? School is a very different situation, and it's a lot of kind of pass fail and all that sort of stuff. I won't bother non-parents with it right now, but the biggest thing is you kind of think as a parent, like, I don't know that my kids are getting exactly the education they should get. So with my son, a thing that we started doing is we are writing an adventure together.
Yes.
Yeah. So it's a way to strengthen his writing. And I blogged about this a little while ago about sort of how we're going about it, but we, to take it sort of progressively through the stages you do to write an adventure. So I'm basically giving him a whole course in this, and he's doing great. He's actually impressing me with his writing skills, which is really cool to see. But so we started with a rough concept and sort of almost storyboarding style idea, and then we got into the really high level outline, and then we just kept outlining more and more to this adventure that we're writing.
Oh, that is so cool. I love that. Especially just as writing practice, right? That's just so solid because it's such, you just kind of boil it down to these specific moments, and we need to make this introduction feel a little stronger. Or I've just walked into this room, like what are the sensory effects that I'm feeling? There's really good ways to give assignments as you're doing that just makes someone a better writer. So it's such a fantastic approach to that. You should be getting credit.
I wish I had your background, Rich, and I'm glad to see your Kickstarter is doing so well.
Yeah,
Congratulations.
Thank you.
It's awesome.
Me too.
This is a good time for you to plug it right now, by the way.
Oh, the Academy of Adventures. Thank you. On Kickstarter, it still has seats for adults, but at the moment, all of the kid classes are full. I have a waiting list. So oh my gosh, I'm not going to say anything more about that, but I'm so excited. It's going to be great. Yesterday, just since you're talking about this, I had a phone call with a friend who was asking me math-based questions about adventure writing. And so we stopped to talk about specific monsters. And we were like, all right, so if this monster has 2 attacks around and has an attack bonus of +5 and does like 12 hit points of damage, what level should, and so there was a lot of, players have probably this attack bonus. How often will they hit? What are their ACs? And it wasn't math, but it totally was.
Yeah,
so,
that's awesome.
So I hope you get to do those when you're working with monsters in there as well, because
Well,
I find that very fun.
There are a number of phases of this that have been really fun. So one that I like is just any new scene that we do. So like we're in a forest and we have to go through this forest. We've already done the town part. We're going through the forest and going to encounter a number of things in the forest before we get to the final cool tower that's at the end. And so it's one of those like, all right, in the outline, we said we were going to do this here. How do you want to describe the scene? How do you want the scene to truly play out? And it's really cool to see, because what I love about adventure writing is you're doing something out of nothing, right? Like just literally there's nothing existing and you're just creating it. And it just starts getting solid as you think about it and do it. You start cementing and then somehow you have a thing. And then people actually play that thing, which is the coolest thing ever. And so having my son go through that is really neat. But the other thing is then you get into the sort of that math crunch sort of mechanic piece. And so we're like, okay, we know we want to happen in the scene. We've got a bridge. We've got, okay, what are the monsters? And we had a sort of idea. And then we look up D&D Beyond or the Monster Man. We go like, oh, yeah, so that doesn't really scale very well, levels 1 to 3. Doesn't really create the dynamic feel we want for the encounter. And so now we're going to make our own monster. So that'll be the next piece when we do building. Maybe today we'll create he'll create his first monster with that, right? And we'll go through how that works.
That is so cool. I have taught a class like this before. So if you can somehow connect to a school, do this for course credit.
That'd be too good.
It's very powerful. That's amazing.
Yeah, so we'll release it at this adventure. We'll go on the DM's Guild because we want to be able to use all the possible pieces for it and hopefully get a little promotion through a guild. But we will. It's around the concept of clockwork creatures suddenly running amok in a forest, and you have to go to the wizard's tower to see what went wrong there. There's some good choices and stuff, and it's fun to see. So my son is a teenager. I should say that because it's for people who don't know, and it's cool to see the capacity he has for good ideas, which isn't really freaky when you think about it, right? I mean, teenagers are exposed to these kinds of good ideas in novels and movies and all kinds of things, but it is really rewarding to see your kid come up with truly he'll surprise me. He'll be like, well, what if what's going on is like, oh, that's really cool. Yeah, let's do that.
That is amazing.
When you were plotting this idea to do this adventure with your son, and even sitting down to do it, do you feel you have even updated the way you are going to be tackling adventures going into the future? And if so, what's some of those things that have changed the way you see it?
No, I don't think it. A lot of this is really the approach that I go through. Like I do a sort of iterative outline approach. I don't do the bubble lines technique or other things that people might do. I do tend to sort of come up with a rough, like let's say 3 points on an outline, and then all those points become a lot of outline points and levels. And then I just start writing chunks of that at a time, and create and adding additional things as I need. But seldom, and once I get to that, the detailed outline level, it usually won't change significantly in terms of other sections won't change. I'll just do neat things to the interim sections. I might swap a sub piece out, like I did that in the Ack Inc. book. At one point I swapped a whole encounter out. But the story didn't change, right? The overall story. Once I get it, that feels solid to me pretty early on.
Mm-hmm. So you kind of approach this with already a solid, a way of writing these adventures. And, I guess the question kind of came from, for me, whenever I'm teaching someone something, it always kind of cements it in my head a bit more. So, I was wondering if in working with your son, you feel like your next adventure is going to have more not more bells and whistles, but be, a little more, that process is going to be a little more streamlined.
Yeah, not significantly. I think at this point, I've done this enough times. I don't want to sound like Sean Merwin, but it's, like whatever Sean says, like, I can't remember what I worked on. I go like, come on. But as time goes, you kind of, I really have done a lot of this process. And so my process is fairly, it's not that it never adjusts a bit, but it's only in small amounts at this point that I change my process from year to year, because it's what works. And for example, like if I don't do a detailed outline, and this is true when I create a D&D campaign, if I don't have a solid ending, I will never have an ending because I'll continually revise it. Because I'm when I play a video game, I'm the kind of person that when you know that end room is in front of you, you still do the other rooms, and I will never stop that if there are other rooms. And it's the same thing when I design. If I don't know how I'm ending this, I will endlessly be thinking through it. So I really just have that outline needs to be there for my sanity and for my process to all work. So some of it is just that it's just the way my brain works. I have to put some limits in place. And
it's we talk a lot about like building campaigns and building games and that type of stuff. Do you ever find the ending, you say you have this concrete ending, like how concrete is it whenever you're in play? So take our Chult campaign, right? Mm-hmm. Like, the Chult had an established ending. I haven't actually read it yet. And I've not played through it again. So I don't know if your ending was slightly different and that's okay. But is that ending a moving target a little bit? Like you have this solid ending, but the party can change it, or you know what I mean? Or is it always going to be a little more directed to that point, to that apex that you've designed?
So the ending that you had left off a small piece that they have at the end that I find sort of deflates that last scene. Mm-hmm. To me, it takes away some energy and it's kind of unnecessary. So I just removed that. And then if you recall, we did a sort of like, where is everybody now kind of montage, mm-hmm. Where we thought through, you guys kind of thought through what are your characters do over the next, 10 or so years, sort of what's your impact, because you guys had done a lot to change Portney and Zaru through extra things we added in the middle of the campaign. So this was an opportunity for you guys to say, what does that really translate to? Like, do you want to take over, Portney and Zaru as one of the merchant princes? Are you the second in command for one of the merchant princes? Are you, what is it that you're doing, right? And then I did that for the NPCs as well, right? The where are they now kind of thing. Mm-hmm. That's at the end of the movie. So we did that, which was fun. But in general, I knew I was sticking to the end that it has because I liked it. I thought, other than that little bit that I shaved off, I think it's a satisfying boss battle conclusion kind of. Yeah.
Yeah, the weird. Yeah, I guess I don't want to say what it is because
right. I don't want to spoil
it. I don't want to spoil it, even though like at this point that adventure is. Well, yeah, it's clearly over a year old, right? I was like, it's clearly over a year old, right? Yeah, it took us a year to get through that campaign. Yeah. So you also worked on Acquisition Sync, and this is something that both Rich and I are fairly interested in, and I think
This is the first book. This is the one that made me realize, sadly, that authors don't have their names on the cover of D&D products. And I was like, but I want it to say Teos on this book.
So, there's a story there in that when it was going to be a Penny Arcade project, part of the deal was that Sean and I would have our names on the cover as the co-authors. But when it became a Wizards book, then that wasn't possible, and I knew that wasn't. Sean and I were like, "That's not going to happen." So we talked to Penny Arcade about it, and they were like, "Yeah, no, it's fine. We'll help you promote other things, in other ways, but we're not, can't do that."
Well, I'm glad it's on the inside and in multiple places.
Yeah, that is nice. So that was it. It's ridiculous. I kind of can't believe any of it. It was all a crazy thing that it even happened. For this to happen, I had to randomly run into, the Ack Inc. guys and just, it was like just such happenstance to end up doing this. But it was, I'm so glad it happened. And it's hard. It's hard to work on a project like this. It was hard for Penny Arcade to work on a project like this. They're basically 100%, well, really like 150%, capacity on just the conventions they run, and then they do all these other various things, and then they periodically take on a project like this. And so there are many months where Sean and I would go, I don't know if this is ever going to be a book. Like we have to be ready for that. You know, like as hard as we're working, this might never come to be because just everybody's so busy. And even though we're having meetings periodically and we're designing together and doing all this stuff, like it just could all, you know, hit a brick wall, or it could hit the WotC wall somehow and never be approved or become a project, or, you know, or Wizards might get it from Penny Arcade and say, yeah, this all goes away. You know? So we were always prepared for all these possibilities, which was difficult. You know, I know someone who's had something like that happen where like lots and lots of words went away. And I you know, I don't know how I would have survived that, but we were trying very hard to be in a place where we could have survived that. The good news was really our words survived largely intact. Those of Sean and I, and our editor, Scott Fitzgerald Gray, who's amazing. And the three of us did a lot of that scheming and thinking, working with the Penny Arcade team at sort of the outline level. And then Sean and I did a lot of the writing, then Scott added writing, and the entire Penny Arcade team added writing to it. So when you look at all those like funny quotes and a lot of the tables, those are all like the entire Penny Arcade staff contributing with those funny pieces, it just shows you how hilarious those folks are, because they're great. All those little tables are just super hilarious.
Yeah.
And then Wizards kind of filed some of it.
I was just going to say, so the funny stuff is all from Penny Arcade. And then you clearly did most of the writing. Like, did Sean actually do anything, or?
No. we truly, of the stuff that we wrote, it really was half and half. So he worked on all of the subclass, or all the class sections that talk about how to do like a you know, corporate barbarian raider kind of thing, and all that stuff. In fact, he actually had created subclasses, but Wizards was not in a time when they wanted subclasses, so they all had to go away. But all those ideas really, they existed as the classes. Thank you, Aubrey. And I worked on the franchise part and the positions, which, you know, Justin knows. I play tested the franchise idea in our Chult campaign as how they could run a sort of like business, so they could keep doing things in Portney and Zaru and Chult while they're out exploring in the jungle, and even led to them having sort of a second team of characters that they played, sort of their employees that went and accomplished more, so they could be in the dungeon exploring but still be outside doing some other the chat's making me laugh. So you know, they could be in the also accomplishing these other pieces that they hadn't otherwise accomplished, you know, their sort of first pass through the jungle. And that was it was neat to see that, and that led to the whole franchise rules being a particular way. And I couldn't tell them anything about what we were doing, which was fun.
In the chat, Taylor, who was also in the game, has pointed out that I think our B squad was pretty terrible at every role. I mean, kind of across the board. The B squad was a little bit of a joke, but the B squad was a lot of fun because, like, you know, they weren't the characters that we were so attached to. So it's like, you know, whatever. So what if this character is kind of like two-dimensional and just a little goofy, and, you know, maybe they take risks I wouldn't take with my main character. It was a lot of fun, and I was planning on doing something like similar to that in my home game where I had a B squad, because I just love that idea. But we moved to Roll20, and it's like, and it got complicated. So yeah. Have you been doing? Go ahead.
No, hit me.
No, I was gonna pivot the conversation, but I think we should keep talking about Acquisitions Inc. Because there's still more to talk about. Yeah, this book right here.
Yeah. You know, this is just such a joyous book.
It really
Thanks.
It just makes me really happy. I'm glad it exists. You know, it gives this unique feel that a lot of the other books don't. And I'm so happy to have it on my shelf, Teos.
Thank you. Me too.
I will also say, I know you talked about the downtime rules on your blog recently. I was trying to write some downtime stuff. I was, you know, and then I looked at this and I was like, never mind. Like, there's no reason. This is comprehensive.
I'm glad to work with you on it. I helped Justice Arman with the Candlekeep. There's that. It's been selling gangbusters. The Candlekeep Companion, unless there's Candlekeep Companion, I think that's the name of it. That's on the DM's Guild. It's in one of the top slots. You will not miss it if you go to the DM's Guild. But it's all about Candlekeep. It includes a downtime rule for
Ooh.
specifically researching at Candlekeep, because it's something that you're often going to want to do is go to Candlekeep with a question to answer. So the two of us worked on that downtime activity and how it could be different than the research activity that exists in Xanathar's Guide to Everything, or there's another sort of variant on research that's actually in the Acquisitions Incorporated book. So we figured out kind of how that would work together. It was very much still Justice's idea completely, but it was
It's just it's so good because like you mentioned in your blog, the rules that exist in the DMG, is that the first place or in the player's handbook? I can't remember.
It's both,
are
actually,
so light, right? They're so light that it was, I don't want to say skippable, but it was like an idea that wasn't fully baked out, right? And just to have that now, this ability to have your B squad or have downtime really represented well in your game is so awesome. This will become part of my Birthright process.
Yeah, I mean, downtime would be perfect for Birthright, right? It really actually works for a lot of campaigns, and that's why I wrote, a multi-blog series on it, a multi-post series, because it is sort of this. It's so easy to miss it, but there are times when you want to do something that isn't like a room by room, encounter by encounter type approach. But you want to resolve it, and that was also something I play tested. All of the downtime activities that we created, I play tested variants of those during our campaign, and we would do this whole our B team and the pirate. We hired pirates. I say we because like I was one of the players, but the players hired pirates, and they would theoretically go on mercantile expeditions, which were really raiding other vessels. And so I would use the downtime to create this sort of narrative scene with just 3 roles, but it'd be like 15 minutes of fun of what the people in your employ are carrying out. And so you had this long arm, right? And that was what was cool, is that they could be inside a dungeon, but they've got things that are happening in the greater world, and they're doing that. And we would resolve plot points with downtime too, which was kind of cool.
Yeah. Yeah, you did a great job using downtime to move the plot forward, and that was a lot of fun. And it was presented in a way where we didn't even like put together that we were using downtime. It was just like, because you wrapped it into the story so well. It's just like, oh, here we go. We get another sending from our crew on a ship. What's going on, Captain?
Right. Downtime's a little bit like 4th edition skill challenges in that you can run them as, all right, choose your best skill and make a roll to succeed. What did you do? And you're like, I chopped away the forest with an axe. Great. Okay, what did you do? I just pushed through the brush. Okay, that's fine. But you can also do a much more narrative version of it. And so we would do things like, we would say like, okay, the ship that you've sent out to do business encounters another ship with flags from Baldur's Gate. They're approaching. You've taught them all about how to scope out danger. So you, as the person who's so good at looking at things, make me roll to see whether they carry out your instructions well. You rolled really well. So you notice they're all have, concealed weapons. They look like a vulnerable, vessel, but this is actually really ready to go. And the truth is that usually you guys failed those rolls. And so it would be instead you were surprised by all the weapons they had on board, and you're losing, but then at the last minute you pull it out. And then I would add a press your luck mechanic to the end, which would be sort of fun. So you guys had some decision making. So you could say, okay, you were able to, you're kind of in the middle of your forces are retreating. They've got a decent amount of loot, but they probably could try to get a little more loot out of this. Do they go for it? And you guys would sometimes say yes. And then, that was fun.
Wow.
Well, it depends on who the spotlight was on, who said yes a lot of the times too. Like, there's a couple of us who are always like, yeah, let's push our luck. And then there's a couple of us who are a little bit more timid or tactical. It's like, no, don't do it. Yeah. So.
And the fun thing with AI too is that what we did is then we took all these concepts that we built in and we put them into the adventure. And so the adventure has these 6 chapters, and I wrote the second 3, and Sean wrote the first 3. And then we wrote at the outline stage all of it with Penny Arcade and with Scott Fitzgerald Gray, who's really good at this. And so we put together this story that would use all of the rules. So like at the end of a chapter, your franchise is doing things and you are using the downtime activities. So, and the whole point of this was to really help DMs do 2 things. One is use the rules that are in the book and know how to apply them. And the second is to show every DM how you can run an acquisition style adventure if you want that. so you can understand like this is how it can feel, right? It can be this kind of a wackiness and fun. And I really like that adventure. I think it's really good design, some of the better design that we've done. And there's some crazy things. Like there's a wedding in there, dwarven wedding. This is the one where I completely changed what I was originally going to do, because we wanted to do a throwback to if you're not a fan of AI, whatever, this is just fun. You know, you go to these places, you have fun. But if you do watch the Acquisition Score Rich shows, then you're like, oh, I'm doing kind of like I'm going to a place they've been, right? I'm slightly different, but so there is a whole web series they did where they did a show where they invade a dwarven enclave to steal a piece of the Rod of the Seven Parts. So we sent everybody back to that place. But the thing is, like, they left literally having made themselves the worst enemies of those dwarves. Like, they did all kinds of almost immeasurable things that were wrong. So they couldn't be hated more, right? Acquisitions Incorporated is persona non grata in that place. And so what I did was the idea that this crazy spell gets cast, so you can swap bodies with the next caravan that comes along, so you already have a way in. So if you'd like that way in, that's a possible way you can just take them up on it. But the bodies you swap with are a dwarven wedding party. And so what you get when you're doing it is every character gets, at one point, it's sort of activated in your personality an agenda goal that you have. And a secret is revealed to you, the player. And you don't reveal it to anyone else. So you suddenly realize, all right, I'm a member of this wedding party, and I must do this one thing. And there's some surprises, like someone is not quite what they seem to be, and someone is going to test one of the other characters to see if they've changed, and all this kind of, and it's fun. And the other thing is the dwarven party is two families. One is the kind of bent on destruction, warmongering, battle-lust dwarves, and the other ones are the ones that have prospered through mercantile activities, and let's not do any of that fighting anymore. So there's that tensions going on at the wedding. In the middle of all this wedding stuff, you're trying to steal something out of their vaults under the having taken over their bodies. So it's a ridiculous scene. And it was one of those things where I was supposed to write a different thing, and this somehow came into my brain, and I'm like, boy, I hope they like this, because I'm doing this. And I forget if it was 15,000 or 10,000 words we were doing for each section, but I wrote this piece. And I sent it in, and oh my God, I hope Scott likes it, because he's our editor, and I really trust his opinion. And if he said it was bad, I'm going back and doing it over. And he liked it. I'm like, oh my God. Because it's pretty crazy. It's a pretty crazy encounter idea.
Oh my gosh. Okay.
I'm also a big fan of pissing off dwarves, so maybe I should pay more attention to acquisition scenes.
You should. Well, I ran this. This is the other thing that was crazy about this encounter is I ran this for a group of middle school kids, because I ran it for my son and his friends. And when we got to this wedding scene, I'm like, man, are they gonna do this? Like, I'm gonna tell them that they've swapped bodies and that they have these goals. They loved it. They nailed these scenes. They were great, and like, they changed gender and all kinds of that. So I was like, I think kids are progressive enough these days. They're going to be cool with this. And, they were like the guy who plays the half-orc barbarian. He's like, I'm the bride to be. This is awesome. And I'm like, all right, we're good. And the secret got revealed to one of the characters. And they're like, oh my God, I have to do it. Yeah, you do. Okay. And it was great. And they had a blast.
That's so good.
How do you find, in actually both of you may have more experience of this than I do, because I tend to I have a limited amount of patience for children. It's not that I dislike them. It's just limited, right? Only can go so far. In Teos, I know you've run campaigns for middle schoolers, which middle schoolers to me seem like the worst group of monsters on the planet, but there is an aspect of their energy that I think, and you kind of maybe pointed this out, that lends itself to really getting engaged in role playing. And what I guess my question is how do you find the differences between a group of old codgers like me and Taylor versus your son and his friends?
And let's not even talk about Jonathan.
Yeah, well. Dude's practically dust at this point.
There's a lot less backstabbing. No. So, yeah, kids, it really depends. And there's a whole sort of middle school zone that even this zone of middle school can vary tremendously from the beginning of it to the end of it, I'd say. So when I first started running for middle school kids, I would keep an eye out for when they started building dice towers, because that's around the time when you start losing them and it's just time to wrap up the session. So the first thing is you just do shorter sessions. Mm-hmm. And then when they're done, they're done, or you give them a break. So with this group, they were now at an age where they could go longer. So we would play 3 hours. In the middle, we would do a dinner break, and they would run around and burn some energy and talk and eat pizza and whatever, and come back, and that helped because they could now handle an hour and a half or even 2 hours at a time. But it was a lot of it's just trying. So the first thing is you have to want to do it. So I take working with kids pretty seriously. I know, Rich, you do too. That's reasons why you become a teacher. But both my parents were teachers, so to me, it's like, even if something might wear on me in some minor way, like, I don't let it get to me, because I'm sort of committed to the mission of working with these kids and having this be a really good example for them and a good scene for them. And that's some of what parenting is too. You just put away your own self and you just work with them. And when they're having a tough time, you help them through. Like, we have one of the kids that plays in our group that loves to slowly shift how he's sitting in his seat to where at the end, like, you literally see like the point of his sneakers, because he's like lying on the floor with his feet up on the chair. It's just, but that's just what he does, right? He's still participating, but from the floor. Mm-hmm. And it's not super disruptive, so it's okay. And then you have a couple of kids who are a little more disruptive, and so you periodically have to talk to them. And so I'll just say, like, hey guys, we've got a goal of getting through this chapter today. To do that, we're going to have to focus a bit more. Do you guys want to get that done? And yeah, okay.
Right. Yeah. Because part of that is that we're all here to have fun together, and kids, like, I feel like when adults get together to play a game, there's a different feeling than when you're with kids. Like, kids are like, I am doing an activity. Oh my God, I get to do this thing right now, and you're helping me do it, right? You're my coach. There's this very different thing going on. When I get a group of people, like adults together, we just talk and hang out for the first hour, and it's fine, because that's, we're all adults and we need our social time. But like kids, it always feels like a mission.
Yeah.
We're gonna do this.
And the kids do,
it's really nice.
The kids do treat you like they're a little afraid of you, right? Like mm-hmm. Sort of there's this respect/fear of, like, with the dad, we got, can't anger the dad. And so that helps you, and you ride that.
Well, you have your grizzly beard going too, so you're extra intimidating.
I did back that. But so one fun thing I did with the kids as an example of engagement is there's a part in the Acquisitions Inc. adventure where you go through a bunch of portals. And I wrote this in Sanity too. And so there are all these fun scenes. So I put a weird, super brightly neon glowing door, which they uncovered and went into, and they were transported to the world of Star Wars. And I
remember you posting about this.
So I used Espergenesis, which is it's sci-fi for D&D. Really good game, Espergenesis. Uses the 5e rules, so it's all very common. You know what to do. But it's sci-fi. And so what I did is I used those rules and I just renamed things. So I took like the most, big burly kind of creature, and I made that a Wookiee. And I literally took the pre-gens and just scraped off the word, whatever the race is, and I put Wookiee. And I gave those out as pre-gens as they all became these things. And there were a couple of these kids that didn't want to leave, right? And there were some really cute things. Like one of the kids goes, but I want to stay and get trained by Leia. And I'm like, yes.
Oh, that's amazing.
So cute. And then there were two other guys who were like, yeah, I'm done with this. Let's get back to the fantasy stuff.
Right.
Where's the portal?
Yeah, how do we get back to dragons? I'm done with Death Stars.
But I had them escape Vader, like, just in the nick of time and stuff. Vader was like doing like this with his glove as they sped off in the spaceship just in time. It's hilarious.
Wow. That is fantastic. I will say, you talked about breaks earlier, and I hear that a lot. That's definitely a kid thing, that you just have to. So my camp, for example, it's 2.5 hours, and the middle half hour is just a break. It's just, here you might have an activity, just go to the bathroom, get some food, do your thing. And someone asked me, like, why? That seems like a long time. Shouldn't it be a short, like 15-minute break? And I was like, no. We all need to just reset, come back, have that focus time. It's just so helpful. So I also recommend that if you're working with kids. Take that break. Also working with kids builds patience, Justin. So just do it. Just start.
No, forget it. I'm sorry. Are we still having a conversation here? I spaced out.
Well, and I'll say, I think that's great. Like, my favorite is people who know they don't want to do this. Like, that's a gift, because there are a lot of people who don't know they don't want to, or think they can just push through it. And if it's not your thing, don't do it. Like, that's great. We need more people who know they do not want to be doing stuff with kids and just
and it's and I've done a lot of volunteer stuff. I've done I dressed up like a pirate, and I've dressed up like a stormtrooper, and I've done all these things where I go and I interact with children, and it's great. And I do enjoy interacting with children, but I do know that I have a certain time allotment of energy for it. And it's like, and I will go up to that and I'll be like, okay, it's time for me to move on. I'm going to do self-care so that I continue to have good experiences with children. And so for me, my experience sitting at a game table with children has not been great, like in general, because I didn't have the tools that you guys have to know that, oh, the kid over here is squirming, so we need to adjust, or this is happening, or this is happening. Typically, I'm running a table at an organized play campaign, and then it's dad and the 8-year-old son who would rather be playing video games or something, right? That's more of the interactions I've had, right? But that's so for me, like, I could do the spend an hour, take a half an hour break, and I would need the full half an hour. That's about how long it takes to make a margarita, and then I would move into the second half.
Oh, wow.
Teaching tips by Justin.
There's a reason I don't work with kids and I don't have kids.
Totally fair. And wow. It's not easy. So yeah, for sure. It takes a certain kind of person to want to do that extended time. Justin is a lost cause in the chat. That's funny.
Yeah, thanks, Aubrey.
But you've put your good work in with organized play, which is already, there's plenty of people in that position with organized play. So good work there.
Yeah. And, and it's, and I've had tables in organized play where it was mostly kids. And I've, of course, being a little exaggerating of my tolerance, but, I have found that at least in organized play and in group play situations, it's really hard to have a table with more than 1 or 2 children because of the time limits, and you're not able to take those breaks. So, I really appreciate both of you mentioning that, because if I ever get back to DMing organized play and a kid sits at my table, I'll be like, we got this. I got some tips.
Yeah. Well, and the main thing with kids at organized play that I try to zero in on is that you never know like how experienced they are, and this could be really early on. So sometimes when parents take their kids to these games, sometimes it's literally like, please make this go well so the kid likes my hobby. And so I take that very seriously to try to give, like, they are getting all the advantage, they're getting the cool thing, like I want them to get the great experience. And you may have people at your table that don't get it. Like, there was a game that I did at a convention with my son, and my son did this cool thing where he got these flying boots and he flew off this tower and did all this cool thing. We get to the end and the DM goes, who wants the boots? My son's like, yeah, I want the flying boots. And this other guy's like, I have fewer magic items, I get it.
Oh, no.
And the rest of the table's like, are you kidding me, dude? You're really going to steal the item from the kid? And then per the rules, the guy was correct, right? And the DM kind of goes like, are you guys okay with that? And I'm like, yeah, it's fine, And my son's kind of like, And then everybody else gets a potion of flying, and every single person at the table gave him a potion of flying, right? So like everybody else got it, right? It was like the coolest. Yeah. It was like, okay, good save by everybody else.
Wow.
Yeah. I've definitely had a lot of fun, like sitting next to the kid, like having the dad on one side, the kid, and then me. And I think we've even done this, Teos. In that kind of interaction where you were both players, like I've had a lot of fun with that. Yeah, like helping and encouraging and being their cheerleader when they do those awesome things. And when you're DMing for kids, at least in my limited experience, it always feels like more of a game of yeses than much of anything else. It's like, can you do this? Yes, you can. Here's what you got to roll, right?
Yeah.
And then, a little fudgery maybe, but whatever. It's a game. It's time to have fun.
Yeah.
Right. Wow, interesting. I'm coming at this, with the camp, just teaching a group of kids at the same time. I always get a little worried when there's a parent, because I know that they are, now we have clashing leaders at the table. Like, can I, is it okay if your kid does this act? There's there's a little more hierarchy going on, which is good. It means, I'm not in charge of behavior, right? If I'm the only one with a bunch of kids, yes, I am. I am in charge of behavior.
No, that's got to be hard. I had a neighbor that came over once to play, because he used to play ages ago, and he wanted to play with his daughter. And his daughter proceeded to want to murder everything in the tavern. And he was having such a hard time understanding how his daughter could want to murder all these people. And she was convinced, it was like, why did I start in the tavern, right? Mm-hmm. Because there was nothing to do in the tavern, but the adventure started in the tavern, so I just added the scene. And I thought about skipping, and I didn't. I should have. And she was convinced that something was afoot at the tavern.
Yeah.
And anything I did to try to get him out of the tavern became a plot point she was clearly picking up on. So I closed off the upstairs. I put a close sign, and she's like, "What's going on upstairs?" I sneak upstairs. I'm like, there's a person cleaning up what? And it's like, oh my God, no, let's go. And meanwhile, she wants to maybe I should attack her, the person cleaning. And I'm like, no, and the dad's just horrified. It did not go well.
I think that's the perfect example of starting in a tavern, as most adventures do, is the worst place to start an adventure. Oh, wow. One of my favorite adventure starts is from Ashes of Athas, where you're in the cart and you're in the cavern, and it's boom, you're into the action. That's it. Yeah. You're here. Yeah. That was one of my favorites. I loved that so much.
Well, and I stole that from Spycraft, because there's a living Spycraft game where you start in the back of a Jeep, and your control is speaking to you through a voice box in the Jeep telling you what to do. And in front of you is another Jeep that you're chasing down, and they're setting up an RPG, getting ready to fire it at you. And the DM says, "Which one of you is driving?" And I'm like, I'm playing wheelman. And here we go. It's like, oh my God, this is so cool.
Right?
Wow.
Indiana Jones doesn't start in a tavern. It starts with him trying to swap out the idol. Right?
Yeah, exactly.
And even when it ends up in the university, he quickly sneaks out and goes to the adventure.
Yeah. Oh my God.
I am kind of excited about this tavern adventure, though. I just a plot deity continues to add things to hide this cryptic crime that you must either find or go on the second. What if you just left and they were like, well, I guess the adventure's over?
Yeah, I probably should have just improv something, right? That's why I should have just been fine. You find you see the toe of a boot. She's, hiding Abadia up there, and just have them feel great about it.
But it's hard. It's hard to do that kind of stuff you had a whole other story planned. It's hard.
I had a whole adventure to run, and we never actually finished that one. And that's just sometimes with kids, it just, it goes sideways, and that can happen. But you learn as you go, and it gets easier and easier as you do it. And that's one where I should have just said, I'm going to break the wall. I'm going to tell you there is nothing going on at the tavern. Just so you know. And if you want to do anything fun at the tavern, let me know what you want to do. But there's literally nothing going on at the tavern. And oh, okay. But
at that point, it's at that point, it's like the Addams Family aren't up to anything creepy ever, right? So you just set it up as this. Can't talk them down.
Yeah.
All right. Well, we've reached that magic time of the show where we have to start wrapping up. I know.
It's so frustrating.
One of these days we'll finally hit our stride much earlier in the show and be ready to end at the end. But let's.
Did you guys already hit record? Did we start?
Oh no!
Did the show start?
Well, we're not really doing a show. We're just doing a test. Nobody's ever going to see any of this. Yeah, we didn't want to besmirch our new project with.
That's fair. I'm here to smirch and besmirch.
Oh man. So Teos, let the folks know where they can check you out going forward.
You can find me on @Alphastream on Twitter, and my blog is alphastream.org, and from there you can get to all my streaming stuff as well.
Sweet. Rich, where can we see you this week?
Well, this week you can check me out at Armelina, of course. Hopefully I'll be in your mailboxes soon. People who backed Empyrean Investigations, that book is on the way at this, closing and unbeing on the way. It's packed over there now. And the Academy of Adventures still has a week to go, a week and 2 days. So I'm excited for that. I'll be pushing that all week too.
Yeah.
What about you, Justin?
I'm 2HitAC0 on Twitter and Instagram. You can also follow my DJ adventures at DJ Pirate Rabbits. I will be streaming here on Twitch. Next time will be Monday afternoon for an after-work session. After-work sessions tend to be a little bit more chill. And then Tuesday night, my normal house movies and classic flicks, which is a ton of fun. And that'll be me this week. And, and once again, Teos, thanks for joining us.
Absolutely.
And by demands of the chat, you'll have to come back again soon. Maybe we'll come up with a topic that's relevant to you and bring you on, like
Sweet.
llamas.
Llamas. I was just gonna say llamas.
Wait, really? Is that true? We could talk about llamas for a whole hour. I'm in. I'm ready.
All right.
I mean, all these years I've still been living in Justin's backyard.
All right. Thanks, everyone.